Hey guys, sorry, my camera just froze up and shut down. That was take number 3. So we're going to start number 4. It was 29 minutes though when it stopped. I was even halfway through because there's some cool stuff in here. So anyway, weapons and equipment, part 9, I believe we are. Dwellings. Okay, I'm going to skip a bunch of this stuff. Land ownership. Ronaldo owns all the land. It filters down to us through her daughters, their temples, their priestesses, and the husband protectors, right? Owning includes maintenance costs. Land grants. A single hide, 2 or more hides, 5 or more hides, or 10 or more hides, right? A single hide is generally a ceremonial. They're not expecting you to actually do anything with it. A few hides is a gift of note, though, but does not represent a strong binding between the giver and the receiver. 5 or more, though, that's a considerable gift. Again, remember, this is how much priests and nobles have during character creation. So it's a respectful amount of space, although it doesn't necessarily have to be contiguous, right? But you're expected to be active participant in local issues and politics. And then, 10 or more, that's a huge thing. Nobody's going to really do that until you're like, hero-ish kind of thing, right? Okay, quality of the land. Cool little table here: bleak, sparse, average, abundant, and lush. Anywhere from -50 to +25. I like that. That's handy to have. And that modifier goes to your harvest roll at the end of the year when we do sacred time phase. Now, what happens if you have bleak land? Can you improve it? Of course you can, but it's going to take time and money and effort. So they suggest a full year's worth of dedicated effort. What that really means, I couldn't tell you. We'll raise it from one quality category to the next. And it says, game master discretion, a year of neglect may do the opposite. Well, if you're neglecting your land, it's going to do the opposite. But I don't think status quo, just maintain your land is neglect. I don't think that's the case. I think you should leave it or let it run down or not have somebody manage it or something, right? Representation and responsibility. The law is looking at one person who owns the land that they're responsible for its condition, and it doesn't really matter who underneath making decisions or what they're doing. You're the guy. Reputation and land grants. Okay, so being granted land implies being worthy enough for a grant of land. That's based on reputation. So if you have a reputation 25% or less, you're not really worthy to be granted land, right? Well, according to the book. So what they do instead is they give you this little, well, it's not an equation, but it's verbiage, right? So you instead of gifting them land, which you would have done if they would have been, of reputation enough to have land and be responsible and have a place in society and all that good stuff, right? So you give a quarter of the land's value of whatever it was you were going to gift them. I think we're kind of defaulting to five hides here, kind of thing. So a quarter of that in wheels, that's gold, right? Plus half the land value in beasts and trade goods, plus a +1 reputation per hide of land you would have gotten, but you're not. Okay, lands and buying lands and dwelling. Bargain skill, decrease it. You can use your reputation though to augment that bargain skill. I thought that was cool. Okay, homes. Homes are square. Ronaldo, the earth, right? The earth rune side, but the size and scale change with value. Okay, every home has a capacity, a time to build, a price, and the maintenance cost for it. The cheapest and the smallest is shelter. 4 walls and a thatched roof. If you can make a survival roll, you've built it for free. A hut. This is typical for a poor standard of living, right? Again, if you make a survival roll, you can build it for free. Single room, fire in the middle. They talk about stilt huts, the ones the ducks make. A small home. This is typical if you're a free standard of living. So that's most of your adventurers, right? Generally divided into 4 rooms. This will take skilled craftsmen to make. Speaking of which, A small home takes 8 weeks to build, has a capacity of 8. So 8 people can live in a home comfortably, right? You can stuff more people in there for short periods of time. But typically long term, 8 people, right? Takes 8 weeks to build, but it takes 16 workers to build that house in that 8 weeks. You double that to 32 workers, you can cut down to 4 weeks. If you have it down to 8 workers, you're going to increase it to 16 weeks. It's kind of that man hours kind of thing working out there. Costs 15 wheels to build a house, a small house, and it takes 50 lunars to maintain. Is that 50 lunars coming out of that 60 that you make for the entire year? I don't know. It seems to me that if a small house is part of a free standard of living, it should be part of a free standard of living. Maybe it's for people who are building their own, an extra maybe, or trying to upgrade. I'm not sure, but they've got that here. A villa, and this is cool. This is tied into shoot, now I can't remember. Did I mention about the game I'm playing in? The GM uses a RuneQuest 3 system, but we're augmenting it with the economics of RQG because our party's been gifted a villa with some vineyards and we're trying to repair and build it up because it got raided by goblins and has been in disrepair for a long time. Well, villas, right? Great deal of wealth and prestige, full-time servants to run the household. And villas will include many improvements. That word's important. We're going to cross it again. Completing possessing a villa gives you a D3 of reputation. Good to go. And then talk about palaces. I'm not going to worry about that. Hides of land. Talk about a little bit about land equivalents. Remember back in the blue book that so many cattle is a hide equivalent of income. Land inside a city or a village is generally not sold or given away or anything like that. The land belongs to the settlement. You own the house on it, right? But there are ways you can modify that house, right? Build it up, do that kind of stuff. And if you are in fact gifted land, you can make improvements on it because you're given the rights to the existing property. But then we need to determine, is there anybody already living on that land? And there's a nice little table for that. Existing inhabitants. Everything from none to the existing tenant farmers to squatters to gangs to monsters. Okay. So you've got land, you go to investigate, you find that there's people who are living there or not living there. But you also find about the quality of the land, which we checked on earlier. And then you find out the feature of the main qualifying feature. They call it random land features, but it's like a qualifying or a main feature of that hide of land, right? Because every hide is different. Different quality, different inhabitants, different features. Okay, and this is cool. I really like this features table, right? Everything from a chaos site to a holy site. You can have a swamp on there, you can have forest on there, you can have a rocky escarpment, you can have a ravine, rolling fields, which are good for herding, but not necessarily for farming, right? Arable lands, that's your standard, 40 lunars per year. Could be fertile lands. It could have a pond, a creek, a river, or a lake on it, right? All these cool things, and every single one of them have game mechanics written into it. Love it. A chaos site. 10% chance per season of a chaos incursion. Starts as a light raid. And apparently this affects your harvest roll. Maybe there's something in the Sacred Time section of the Blue Book talks about chaos or raids or something. I don't recall offhand. I haven't looked it up. If it's not dealt with after one season, the light raid becomes a heavy raid. And that's something I was just, in my last video, I was just arguing back and forth about. Is it 10% block per season? Like 10% each season? Or is it increased 10%, 20% the second, 30% the third, until you get that light incursion, right? Or light raid. And then after the light raid, if you haven't done anything about it, a heavy raid will come next. 40, 50, 60% chance of one occurring, or just 10% each time. I'm not sure. I'm kind of thinking 10% each time. And then after a light raid hits, then you're rolling 10% for a heavy raid. And after that, a major invasion. But through adventure, divine intervention, or hero questing, you can cleanse a chaos site. And I also realized last recording that my players have been adventuring up and around Roomgate and Two Sisters, and there's the chaos spot out there with a drop of giant chaos bat blood spill, right? And there's the Darkness of Roomgate scenario, which is all tied around the area too, and I'm going to have to start rolling for raids and incursions. Okay, swamp. The land has swamp or a bog on it, permanently reducing the income of that land by 20 lunars. Why can't we just say that land produces 20 lunars so long as it has a swamp on it? Only major efforts, magic kind of stuff, divine intervention, or hero questing can rid land of a swamp. Probably a bog, though. Because when you say swamp, everybody thinks of the upland marsh. That's just one place. But there's lots of swamps around. Okay, forested. A large portion of this hide of land is forested. Can be cleared at the cost of 5 wheels, that's gold, and it takes the entire season of logging, but it will convert it into arable land, normal farming land. And potentially some value for the timber. I would say definitely the value for the timber. If it's not converted, this hide produces half normal income each year, or reducing the income for that hide by 20 lunars, or produces 20 lunars. Consistency, that bothers me. So, produces 20 lunars per year. There's also a 50% chance that something lives in the forest. We got a sales table there. It could be Algerami, it could be dangerous plants, it could be spirits, it could be monsters, chaos monsters, or it could be conflict between any two of those things. I think that's totally cool. Rocky escarpment reduces the usable space of that hide, lowering its income by 15 lunars. So in other words, it produces 25 lunars. There is an enterprising owner may attempt to turn into a quarry or a mine, and there are quarry and mine comments in other sections later on, but they don't tell you how much it costs to run a mine and how much money you make off of a mine, or a quarry for that matter. But there's a 50% chance that a cave exists on the escarpment. Most caves have something living in them. Ooze, animals, spirits, monsters, chaos monsters, or they could be empty. A ravine. Large ravine running through the land, reducing the amount of usable space and its income by 10 lunars. In other words, it produces only 30 lunars with a ravine, unless you have a bridge improvement built. Also, a ravine has a 75% chance of a cave or caves, plural, within it. Again, cave inhabitants. Rolling hills. As I mentioned, this is more for herding than for farming, so it'll produce 5 less. In other words, it produces 35 instead of 40 per year, unless there's a road improvement built on it. Arable lands, standard 40 lunars per year. Fertile lands producing plus 5 lunar of yield per year. In other words, it produces 45 lunars per year. A pond sits in the middle of this land, providing easy access to water, not taking much space. Land produces plus 10 lunars per year. In other words, it produces 50 lunars per year if you've got a pond. A creek produces 55 lunars per year. Land with a creek produces 55 lunars per year. Land with a river produces plus 20, produces 60 lunars per year. Fish may be plentiful, but it doesn't really tell you what that means. Like, all right, if you have fishermen there, will fishermen come stay there? They do at the lake. Wouldn't they at a river as well? And if so, how much money do you get out of the fish? Now, if the river is accessible, is that the word? Yeah. With easy access to either side of the river, which means you can ford it, right? Then the land, that hide produces plus 20 lunars. I said that, right? 60, yeah. But there's a 25% chance the river is impassable, in which case it takes a bridge improvement to get that plus 20. There we go. That was the problem. Without access, the land only produces 30 lunars per year. You mean it doesn't lose 10 lunars per year? Consistency, right? Okay. A lake. A large lake gives access to plenty of fresh water and fish. The land produces plus 10 lunars per year, but we don't know if that's from the fresh water for irrigation or if that's from the fish. But it does say that in addition to the farmer that's required to maintain that land, several fisher families will settle if allowed, adding 10 lunars per year. I can see putting the plus 10 lunars there. So land with a lake produces 50 lunars per year. If there are fishermen families there, then it produces 60. So if you get fishermen on the river, maybe they produce another 10. That's the idea. Okay, holy site. This is kind of cool, right? So this site is considered sacred to a local cult. There's a 50% chance that there is a shrine improvement already there. A holy site adds 5% to your worship skill, to any worship skill roll performed at the site if there's no shrine, 10% if there is a shrine. It may also have inhabitants particular to the god devoted to that shrine, such as a whiter or something. There's another thing about, we'll get to shrines and temples later on. More to come. Okay, fortifications. Time to build, price, and maintenance costs. I didn't mark any of this stuff. So, everything from a ditch and a gatehouse to a keep, whether wood or stone, palisades, a raised platform, raised walkways, a rampart of earth, a stone tower, a wood tower, all this kind of stuff. Time to build, price, and maintenance. So, a wooden keep takes 3 seasons to build, costs 200 plus wheels, that's gold, and takes 20 wheels, again gold, to maintain for the year. Yeah. Well, what's the most expensive thing here? Stone keep here is the most expensive at 400 plus wheels. But it also only takes 20 wheels to maintain. Okay, improvements, right? This is cool. This is a real cool piece. I like this a lot. Improvements have time to build, a price, and maintenance, right? And building an improvement is not just, can I afford it? It takes leadership and authority, right? To get people to come together. The timing is just an approximation, but it assumes that a local crafter and crew are there. It may take longer if there are components, materials, or expertise that you've got to get from somewhere else. Okay, improvements. An aqueduct brings water, right? But what's the mechanical effect in the game? Doesn't say anything. Do you have to have an aqueduct in order to get water from a faraway place in order to do irrigation? Because irrigation we've got rules for. Yeah, I just don't know. A stone bridge nullifies the penalties of a ravine or a river. A wood bridge reduces that penalty by half. So if we go back to the river, release the river. Okay, without access, it only produces 30 lunars per year. If you have a stone bridge, it will produce the full 40. If it's only a wooden bridge, it's 35. No problems there. Good to go. Oh, caravanserai? Sarai? I don't know. There's places that caravans can stop along the road. You can have large ones, you can have small ones. Larger ones holds more people and adds to your managed household skill for that sacred time roll at the end of the year. Small one only adds 5%. A cistern, like the aqueduct, it gives you water, right? Okay, good to go. But does that then allow you to irrigate if you don't have access to water through a pond or a river? I don't know. I'm kind of thinking maybe. Okay, coppicing, what cops, where being coppiced is performed, coppicing is performed means you're cutting down trees periodically and planting seedlings to keep the growth going. It's useful for obtaining hafts for spears, javelins, and other weapons, quarterstaffs, bows, and arrows, that kind of stuff. That comes from this kind of a place. It's kind of a feature, improvement. This is improvement, right? But it takes several years of growth to actually start reproducing. A dam is a structure that may offend the local water deities, right? So the maintenance for a dam is the cost for rites and offerings to keep the water spirits appeased. But damming up a stream or small river will give you a lake or a pond, right? So, while it doesn't say that, well, it does say create a reservoir that can be used to irrigate land. So there we go. There's a tie-in right to irrigation. But you got to have a stream or small river already. So I'm not sure, but it's there. Oddball thing: exotic furniture. If you have exotic furniture in your house, +1 to your reputation. Okay, irrigation. Irrigation, tapping into a lake, a pond, a river, or a creek. Doesn't say anything about a reservoir or a cistern or an aqueduct. Allows you to channel water through your fields. Adds 5 to your harvest roll. Good, solid mechanic. But just for that hide that is irrigated. So if you start actually mapping this stuff out with your 5 hides and what you've got on it and what's happening and all the improvements you made, it can get kind of complicated. I'm almost looking forward to that. Okay, here we go. Mines, a pit mine. What it is? Yeah, it's a mine. It's an open mine extracting rock, ore, precious gems, and minerals. It talks about crystals and some gems being released of the gods wounded or killed in the gods' war kind of thing with magical properties. Good to go, but how much does it cost to run a mine, and how much do you actually get out of it with this stuff? An orchard. Most plants take several years to mature, but again, does an orchard take away from farming land, and does it compensate it with fruit costs? I mean, do you get money out of that fruit? You should. And here's the quarry, just like the mine. It doesn't really say anything, just a large area of useful stone. Okay. Irrigation. 3 weeks, 10 lunar to maintain. Shrine. Takes 3 weeks to build, 50 lunars to build, 5 lunars to maintain. We mentioned that because on our villa back in the other game world, we're planning on building a shrine. Temple, vineyard, fish, and a well. Okay, roads. Remember, the road will nullify the income penalty of rolling fields. So instead of producing 35 lunars, it will produce 40. Plus, you get a +5 bonus to your managed household skill. And there's a different cost for paved roads and dirt roads. Okay, a shop. If you got a shop, that adds 5% to your managed household. A shrine. Okay, if you get a priest to consecrate the site and shrine so they can be used for worship roles, the shrine gives a +5 modifier to the worship skill for the appropriate cult. So if that shrine that's on the holy site, 10% to general worship, 15 to that specific deity. I like that. Stables or a barn. Stables add 5 to your appropriate occupational income roll for the end of the year. Again, mechanics. Standing stone or statue. Each statue adds 1% to your reputation. 1 or more statues to the grain goddesses on a hide will add +5, should be a percent, +5% to the harvest roll for that hide. Storage buildings allows for surplus harvest to be stored for the next year. And they kind of touch on that a little later, but not really in depth as I recall. But we'll hit it again here in just a minute, right? A temple. If you can attract a full-time priest, that can mean expanding your shrine into a temple, which obviously takes 3 seasons and 150 wheels. Then you've got a temple, and the temple gives a +10 modifier to the worship skill of that appropriate cult, and if it's on that holy site, that's +20 total for that thing. It's +10 general, +10 for specific. Okay, generally it means gifting that priest with 5 hides of land, though. And then that priest is responsible for maintaining the cost of living for all of his assistants, etc. A vineyard will take several years for vines to mature, but again, it doesn't say what a vineyard produces for you. Money, what's the lunar income from a vineyard? Fish weir is an obstruction built from wood and stones placed partially across the river to trap fish. Good to go. Depending on size, it can take 1 to 6 weeks to excavate, but it doesn't tell you what you get. Now, I would guess that maybe you get that plus 10 lunars per season for this hide, assuming you've got a fisherman at least to farm those fish. And then a well. Fresh water is life, required for any form of settlement, especially when having running water nearby is not always possible. But it doesn't say anything about what are the mechanics of having a well. Does it decrease the disease in your community? Does it allow for irrigation? Does it something else? I don't know. It doesn't say. Okay, sacred time. These sacred time rules are to expand on the rules of sacred time in the RuneQuest book. So we've got some cool stuff happening here. They mentioned there's a table here on adventure actions effects on sacred time. So if you do minor religious or spiritual acts such as appeasing an angered spirit, acquiring a minor religious artifact, etc., you got a +1 to your omens roll. Major +2 omens. Minor tenant aid, saving her downs from monsters, helping tenants in need of minor tasks that take up to 2 weeks, repairing damaged tools, mending fences, that kind of stuff. +5 to your harvest roll. If you do major tenant aid, it's +10. Minor boost to job skill. Undertaking a task that is under 2 weeks that will impact the performance of the adventurer's job. Might be acquiring new horses for a tier, that kind of thing, right? +5% to the appropriate skill for your income roll. Again, mechanics. I love it. Okay, profits and loss. Okay. Goods can be stockpiled from better harvests to be utilized in leaner times. And many of the events from the land events table, which we haven't got to yet, can be mitigated through adventures and hero quests. Okay, during the harvest results in a bonus to the income roll. Part or all of the bonus can be stockpiled in the storage building improvement if it's present. The stockpiled portion of that bonus, so we're just talking about lunars worth of value, the lunars worth of stuff, foodstuffs, right? The stockpiled portion of the bonus is not applied to the current year's income roll, but instead, half of that is applied to the harvest roll next year. Interesting. But you've got to have a storage building on that hide for that hide to be able to do that. Okay, just like reputation gains and monetary rewards, the Game Master can award special bonuses to sacred time rolls based on how the adventurer's actions have directly impacted their lands, either positively or negatively. And they're kind of talking about that minus religious acts from that adventure action chart above. Lastly, this is interesting. An adventurer can give up their training and research time for a season and give a +1d6 bonus to any of the 3 sacred time rolls, but only one. Okay, I know it's not too bad, 20 minutes. Managing property. Generally, somebody has to manage the household, right? And it's common for an adventurer to have some family member or a hireling do that for them. This person's called a seneschal, right? Seneschal and their family live year-round on the lands, managing them for the adventurer. A seneschal's standard of living is generally 1 or 2 ranks below the adventurer's, but at least 3. A seneschal has a managed household skill of 50 or more, and they take 10% of any profits after the adventurer has paid for the hireling's standard of living. So we pay for their standard of living, which is free or maybe higher, and they take 10% of the profits from the land. There we go. Maintenance costs must be paid each year during sacred time. But what if it's part of your standard of living? Oh, it says right here, the maintenance cost for the home granted by a standard of living is included in paying for the yearly cost. If you choose to live in a grander home, then you have to pay that difference. That's where that the cost thing came apart. That makes sense. Okay. They must also pay the maintenance for any additional dwellings, fortifications, or improvements. So additional stuff needs to get paid for. Missing maintenance payments add the level of disrepair to a dwelling fortification, or improvement. Any bonus that the building gives drops by 20% per level of despair till the building collapses. The improvement. We're talking about improvements here, right? Missing maintenance payments add the level of disrepair to, well, dwelling, fortification, or improvement. They're all in the improvement list, right? So it decreases by 20% per level of despair until it collapses after 5 levels of despair. Despair can be fixed at a price of maintenance cost times 1.5 per level of disrepair. I said despaired earlier, didn't I? I did. That's how I read it. Despair. It's disrepair. A building that collapses must be cleared at the cost of 1 maintenance payment. Okay, land events. Another cool thing, right? During Sacred Time, after the family rolls and before the omen rolls, the Game Master should roll on the land events table for each adventurer that owns land. These will occur in the following year. And I have the family rolls also occur in the coming year as well. So we're not surprised. Oh, I had a baby. No. Okay, we know we're going to have a baby. Let's just determine what's going to happen. Extra ties to the local earth temple often appease the goddess in lieu of an earth temple to the appropriate local spirits. So this extra ties, subtract 1 from this event roll for every extra lunar tithe to the temple. For each hide of land owned over the first, we add 5 to the roll. So the more land you have, the more likely something is going to happen. Actually, something bad is going to happen, right? Because good is low, bad is high. Celestial event, sacred animal spot, tranquility, calm, wildfire, pest, minor raid, earthquake, disease, major raid, drought, invasion, flooding, chaos, incursion. All kinds of things for an adventure. Happy gaming.